Hi, I'm Geoff from Full Race, and today we're here at HeadGames Motorworks. I'm super excited to be here working on the new engine build for my Gen 2 3.5 liter Ford Raptor, and we're going to take a look at the cylinder heads and show you guys what's what.
Hey, Dave LeCali with HeadGames Motorworks. Today, I got a very special one for you. I got my buddy Geoff Racer here from Full Race. Geoff and I have been partners in horsepower for at least 20 years now. We've done SEMA builds, we've done PRI builds, we've done displays, and we're even on the TV show called Pinks a long time ago, and you guys can actually watch that video. You can check out PowerTube TV. I'll leave a link below, and you can watch it for yourself. It was a long time ago. You can see stars like Tony Palo was driving it. Geoff was in it. I was the negotiator. They messed up my name, the whole 9 yards. It's really cool. Check it out on PowerTube TV.
This week on Pinks, a crafty game of cat and mouse between Geoff Racer and Matt Moreland boils down to a surprise ending.
Dude, that's wrong how bad that. No way.
Let's go, baby!
You guys are cheating. You guys have passed the car.
You said yes.
Go for it.
Let's throw it down, all right? Let's just see what these things can do.
It's a best 3 out of 5 drag race for pink slips. Pinks Racing. Lose the race, lose your ride.
Let's race.
Like this show? Want more? Then head to WatchPTTV.com, the new 100% free PowerTube TV streaming network. Home of the best classic and new motorsports racing and build shows on the web.
My plans with this engine are really simple. I need it to be reliable, make a bunch of power. It's not going to be drag raced or anything crazy. We want a pretty solid 60 to 130 times, so something respectable. But I need this build to be simple and reliable above all else. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk to Dave, look at the wear marks, look at anything that's unusual, kind of where some weak links might be and what we're going to address. The turbo setup that's going on this is a pretty consistent, proven setup. It's our Formline Gen 2 kit. Uses Garrett PowerMax turbos. It's going to max around 650, maybe 700 and change horsepower. Guys are doing that on ethanol with stock motors. And I think that's a little bit risky considering how soft the springs are. So Dave's going to take a look at things and try and determine what's the most reliable way we can make 700 plus.
Now, Geoff, you brought us probably one of the more funky cylinder heads that we work on. We did come up with a valve train for it. We've been using a custom valve and a GSC spring kit. GSC was nice enough to make us something. And but the ports are something we should really go over here. The exhaust port is a really complex angle. It's really hard to port it. I don't see really any reason to mess with it though, because I think for the power level we're trying to do, on almost every cylinder head, every genre we deal with, we do not port them for that kind of power. Bowl area, it doesn't look so bad. I think that we could just do a pocket port, we'll do the short side, and this thing would be good to go. I have flow tested these things, and they pick up a good 30 CFM from just a valve job and porting just the bowl area. And the bowl area is just this area right here. So we're gonna resize this into the relation to the size of the valve, so it goes to a certain percentage, and we do the short side radius, and we'll show all that pretty soon. And on the intake side, more of the same. This thing is really, really shrouded up in the bowl area. Now, Ford does do a little bit in right below the valve seat, so it will help it, but when you open all this up, there is like 80 CFM here. It's almost as much as people pick up fully porting a cylinder head is just in the bowl. And then we do a valve job, and you'll see really big gains. The funkiest part I find is how the intake manifold is basically casted into the cylinder head. So this is the valve cover rail, and now you have an intake port all the way up here. Something that nobody's ever done. Ford decided to do this, and I think it's a pretty neat deal. Like it looks a little funky, obviously, but it grabs you right away. It does not flow that bad though, and I think that the injection part of it is really where we find some cool gains.
I agree with you, Dave. One of the really interesting things that I like about this engine is the fact that it has dual injection. So you can see here on this head, we have an area that is basically a port injector. That's just spraying low pressure fuel into the charge. And then you have a direct injector that's spraying high pressure fuel into the cylinder. And these motors actually got port injection due to soot on cold startup emissions reasons, but from a performance standpoint, that allows us a tremendous amount of headroom to just put some big port injectors in there, slap a big turbo on, and we got a ton of fuel headroom.
And I think I want to add that the port injection is facing the backside of the valve. So a lot of the guys who are trying to make big power and they have to add port injection, I would say most of the kits that are out there only hit the intake port. They don't actually hit the backside of the valve, and that's very important for flow, and it's important for making power, and it's important for cleanliness because you're going to be cleaning the backside of the valve with that injection.
So beyond this, we also want to look at addressing the valve train. The springs from the factory are a little bit soft for fuel economy, and as we turn up the boost and look to make a lot more power, you're going to need a stiffer spring. Also notorious is the cam phaser issue. I think this is probably the most commonly talked about issue online, and what we're really simply going to do is we're going to convert this Gen 2 engine to have Gen 3 valve train. We'll use Gen 3 phasers, Gen 3 rockers, Gen 3 lifters, and ultimately those are just Coyote V8 parts, so we're effectively making this a Coyote with 2 cylinders that are lopped off on the end.
For valve sizes, they have a 37.4 millimeter intake valve and a 31.7 millimeter exhaust valve. We are not going to change valve sizes. We are only going to change the valve.
Because this is a sodium-filled exhaust valve, and this is a hollow intake valve, and it is not worth the risk to have a collision with a piston and have the valve take the entire motor out.
If you guys have been watching this channel, you guys know that this is not unusual for boosted applications to have some kind of valve float. Now, it had a factory spring in it. We don't know how much power this thing was previously making, but we can just think that it was making more than OEM, and it had some valve float. Taking a look at the valves that came out of the head, I was talking about it having a lot of valve float. You can see that there is like a ledge that goes all the way around the 45. So this is from the valve beating into the valve seat, and that's on both sides. It really, you can actually see the burn here, but you can also see that it has a ledge here, and that's from just valve floating its balls off and doesn't know what to do with itself, and then it starts beating the whole valve train up. And you can also see it. You can also see it on the top of the valve. The tip of the valve has this little indentation, and that is from it beating into the rocker.
Overall, the combustion chambers look good. We don't see any signs of pitting or foreign objects that got in there and bounced around. These are 2017 to 2018 Raptor heads, so this is the earliest iteration of the Gen 2 EcoBoost engine. And what's worth noting is that it actually has bronze guides from the factory, so this is considered kind of a higher quality race-ish guide, but they're not bronze manganese. It's kind of an OEM-ish bronze. And then in the 2020 up engines, when they went from the ML3Z to from the HL3Z to the ML3Z, you'll see that they actually went to a steel guide, and this is magnetic. And steel definitely is not a race quality material for a guide. And Dave, maybe you can fill us in on why.
So the biggest attribute of having a bronze guide is you can run a tighter clearance from the valve to the guide, and it has a natural lubricity, so you're automatically going to have less friction, and it's going to take heat out of the valve. It dissipates heat a lot better than a steel guide. Another thing is that a lot of times a steel guide is going to break, and when it breaks, it goes into your turbo, and although that's good business for you, it is bad for the customer. So we would always just we're going to yank those guides out. We would put a bronze guide in it and then size it correctly. Now we're talking about the materials, and I just want to point out, now I'm not going to go through the trouble of actually measuring it for the camera, but as you can see, there is a lot of play in here, and bronze usually does not have a lot of play. You can actually run it a lot tighter. Now we go to the steel guide. This is a brand new head. You can see the valve barely moves. So definitely bronze guides need to be replaced.
Something that I just wanted to explain to everybody so they can see is that this is the lifter here and the roller rocker here, and what it does is basically slides into the cylinder head, little bore, and it's going to sit on top of the valve, and so as the cam comes, it's going to push this roller rocker down, and that's what actually is going to actuate the valve. What we're going to do for this build is actually convert it to the Gen 3, and so we'll use the Gen 3 lifter, the Gen 3 roller rocker, which is actually the same thing as the Coyote V8.
So we've been working with GSC for years on this platform. We have a valve train for it. Well, we have a spring kit, and we've changed it over to a conical spring. We also are working with SI valves. SI is going to come up with a factory shelf valve We're going to get rid of the sodium-filled exhaust valve. We're going to put a nice stainless steel exhaust valve, and we're going to have a really killer intake valve. Now, I don't have the correct spring that we're going to use for this, but I just wanted to go over how the OEM spring comes. It's a beehive. Now, I will say, I believe that the first thing that anybody who owns a Raptor and wants to modify it should buy some valve springs. And I would say go with the GSC conical. The GSC conical, the difference is you can see the bottom is fat and it goes up to a smaller top. And so that's going to save weight because we're going to have a smaller retainer, and they kind of stack inside of each other, whereas here the springs are going to stack on top of each other. Now we're going to test the stock spring on our Buxton spring tester. We got in here. So we're at 76 pounds on the seat and 149 open, and that is at 10 millimeters of lift, and we're 114 thousandths from coil bind with a spring rate of 183. So what this tells me is it barely has enough spring pressure to maybe make 650, 700 horsepower. That's about the max we're going to get. But the problem is that you're never going to be able to turn up the RPM because of the spring rate. The spring rate is what dictates what RPM you can run at. Now, the GSC spring is going to be, I think, 30 pounds on the seat and 40 more pounds open pressure than this spring, and over 100. The spring rate is going to be in the 250 to 280 range, so you're going to really be able to turn up the boost, turn up the RPM, and do whatever you want to do. So another thing I think we should talk about is how these have a triple groove valve lock. The triple groove in the performance world is BMW does, a lot of Germans do it, and what it's for is to make so the retainer spins a lot faster than a single groove. Now, we have done both on the Raptor, and we've actually seen no performance gain from going to a single groove from the triple groove. Now, a lot of times there's manufacturers that will slow it down, so what they'll do is they'll make the groove here, they're going to make the groove here thicker, and so it slows the retainer down, but we're just going to keep it just like OEM. So the biggest thing we're going to do here is we're going to increase performance, but along with the performance of it, we're going to make sure that this thing is just dead reliable. So by doing the valve spring, by doing the valve, you don't have to worry about valves burning, valves breaking. If you do the valve spring, you don't have to worry about valve float. And we can set you up with all the Gen 2 stuff. We're going to eventually come out with a kit that puts all the Gen 2 stuff, and that way you can fix your
Gen 3 stuff.
Gen 3 stuff, and then you can switch everything over. You got the phasers, the rockers, the lifter, and now you have a dead reliable Raptor that you can just beat the crap out of every day and not have to worry about it.
So, in summary, I've been coming to HeadGames for over 2 decades. We've been working with them for years and years to prep our cylinder heads for various race cars, projects, and builds. And I'm really excited to be doing this for my own personal project right now. This Raptor is, pet love of mine. We've been making the turbo kit since about 2011, working with Ford. And at this point, it's one of our top selling SKUs. It's super popular. And I'm just real excited to see what this thing can lay down with a fully built motor, prepped, proper tune. And, really, if you guys are interested in this project, keep an eye on @FullRace Motorsports on Instagram and Facebook. We'll be posting on our YouTube page.
And be sure to like, subscribe, comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Toodles.